As you can see, I have now become a highwayman, and to quote Adam and the Ants' seminal 1981 number one single Stand and Deliver, your money or your life. Highwaymen are some of the most romanticised figures in literature and legend, despite the fact that they were basically just ruthless criminals. That being said, I must admit there is something appealing about seeing a handsome, masked, mysterious figure riding on a horse, but that's just me. In this video, I'm going to be taking a look at one of the most unique and famous highwaymen, who was from Yorkshire. So let's look at this part of Yorkshire's hidden history. Churches, banners, kings and queens, factories and big machines, castles, forts and in-betweens are stories that are told. His name is John Nevison, although there's at least 5 variations on his name in the sources. We have a real challenge in terms of building a reliable and accurate portrait of his life for 2 reasons. One is that there's just a real lack of reliable source material, most of it is clearly embellished, and 2, he's shrouded in myth and mystery and enshrined as some sort of Robin Hood, gentlemanly highwayman. As such, trying to peel back the layers and find out the real John Nevison is going to be quite tricky. As such, I'm going to keep a bare bones account of his life. What we do know is that he was born in Yorkshire in 1639. Some sources say Wortley, others say Pontefract. After what appears to be an early life of crime, he fled England for Holland, and this is where things get interesting. There's a complicated war going on at the time, and he ended up serving in an English volunteer regiment under the command of the Duke of York, later to become James II. The reason I say this is interesting is because these regiments were cavalry regiments, meaning you'd have gained experience with horses, which is quite important when it comes to being a highwayman. He reportedly took part in the Battle of Dunkirk in 1658, and after his stint in Holland, he returned to England to start his illustrious career as a highwayman. Now, this is where things get interesting. Our most detailed source on the life of Nevison is something called the Newgate Calendar, which is basically a late 18th century true crime collection. One of the most popular books of the era, it was a collection of stories of some of Britain's worst criminals, murderers, thieves, etc. Its tone and purpose was quite clear. It clearly said these are bad people, these are the bad things they've done, do not be like them. I say that because what's quite interesting about Nevison included in the calendar is that, yes, obviously it's got his bad stories, that's kind of the whole point of the book, but it contains an unusually high number of positive stories about him, which I find odd because they wouldn't want to romanticise or redeem criminals in this book. You've got to make that clear. One of the positive stories, for example, has him travelling on a road where he meets travellers who've just been robbed by other highwaymen. He then goes to find these highwaymen, robs them, and returns the stolen money to the travellers. We're also told that he's kind to women and the poor, and he's almost turned into some sort of Robin Hood figure who steals from the rich and gives to the poor. There's this wonderful paradoxical juxtaposition of him being this kindly and courteous and gentlemanly highwayman, yet him being a ruthless murderer, extortionist and thief who terrorises the Great North Road. That being said, a lot of the stories in the Newgate Calendar are clearly embellished and drawn from uncritical sources, and they're basically the equivalent of penny dreadfuls. However, I believe the fact that there's so many positive stories included suggests that there is a grain of truth to them. And that's because the calendar clearly had no intention of romanticising or redeeming criminals. It was very clearly a book designed to show people how not to act. And so the fact that there's so many positive stories about Nevison included suggests that these stories had been around for a long time and become part of the accepted body of myth around the man, suggesting that they have roots in reality. In any case, what really cemented Nevison in romantic lore was his alleged 200-mile horse ride from London to York. I say alleged because there's no actual evidence he did this. He's never mentioned directly in any of the sources, and in fact the only name we're given is someone called Swift Nick, which might just be a nickname for Nevison or a completely different person entirely. The stories have also been connected to another highwayman called Captain Dudley, who was executed in 1681. In any case, the one person we definitely know did not do this was Dick Turpin, because it happened 30 years before he was born. The ride is never mentioned in the Newgate Calendar, and so we'll never really know for sure, but as Daniel Defoe's 1724 account goes, one morning in 1676 at 4 a.m, Swift Nick robbed a man in Kent. He then rode 200 miles to York, arriving before 8 p.m. He then played a game of bowls with the Lord Mayor, and this proved quite useful, because when he was brought to trial for the robbery at Kent, the Lord Mayor defended him, saying, well, he was in York at 8 o'clock, and no one could possibly ride 200 miles from Kent and arrive in York at the same day, and he was acquitted. So that was rather lucky and daring of him. Regardless of whether Nevison actually did or didn't do this ride, it's become permanently attached to him in myth and legend, and there's nothing that I, as a Grand Inquisitor of history, can do about it. In any case, Nevison reached a sticky and perhaps a just end. By 1684, he was a fugitive after murdering a man who had tried to arrest him, but he was betrayed by the landlady of the Magpie Inn in Sandal, Wakefield, which is now the Three Houses Inn. Captured by bounty hunters, he was brought to York, put on trial and executed at Knavesmire in 1684. So the story of John Nevison ends. I don't think we'll ever know the real John Nevison. We'll just forever know the mythical Robin Hood gentlemanly one, and really attempt to peel back the layers of this mysterious, complex and contradictory person. There's going to be one person and they're going to be like, that's not the makeup from Stand and Deliver, that's from the 1981 number one single Prince Charming. To which I say, you're right, but I don't have any white makeup, so I had to make do.